Some hockey players appear to be confused as to why Canadians are booing the American national anthem. And hockey fans online are roasting them. So I'm going to get to some of those reactions as well as what these NHL players are saying, as well as a fantastic question, finally, from a sports journalist. In fact, I'm not even sure he's a sports journalist, but someone who asked a hockey player the right question. I'm going to get to what that was and why I'm so impressed by the question. And the answer coming out of it may lead us to some sort of resolution here, some progress potentially. But let me first get to what happened last night. So right now there is a tournament going on in hockey, the Four Nations Face-Off. There is a 2-week break in the NHL. So the best players in the NHL from Canada, the US, Sweden, Finland are all playing in this tournament to see who becomes the victor. Last night was a game between the US and Finland where the national anthem, the US national anthem, was booed as the game was played in Montreal. So I'm going to get to that clip. But first, I just got to show how this is being covered generally by sports media. Headlines like this from The Athletic: Team USA angered, motivated by boos from Montreal crowd at Four Nations Face-Off. I have a different idea of how these headlines should go. As I wrote on Blue Sky here, here's a headline: American hockey players flummoxed at why Canadian fans would boo anthem of country, threatening to annex them. This is not surprising. This booing is not new. It's been going on for several weeks now. So for there to still not be a proper conversation by sports media around what is going on is, I think, journalistic malpractice, especially as it applies to what questions are being asked to these players. But I'll get to that in a bit. First, here is a sampling of the booing from last night. Now, keep in mind, this is actually mild because right before the anthem was sung, the announcer told the crowd there to respect the anthems, and still the Montreal fans there booed the anthem. Now, hockey players and NHL executives are being asked about this. So in that Athletic piece, quote here: "It's unfortunate, obviously, and we wish it wasn't the case," NHL Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly told reporters Wednesday. "But from time to time, things happen and people have strong feelings about it. Obviously, we're aware of what's been happening here." So a lot of the responses tend to be this: just not really addressing anything, just being very in the middle, not wanting to offend anybody. JT Miller, who is a hockey player, thought it was something that could be used as added motivation. Quote, "I think we like it," he said. "Not politically, but maybe just as a sense of we know where we're at in Canada, and I think that fires us up more than anything, so it's great." I'm not sure what to think about this quote because it appears to say here that he's aware of what's going on in terms of the threats of annexation, calling Justin Trudeau a governor, and this is firing him up more to be pro-US. But regardless, this is more of a positive take. I'm not too bothered by this, I suppose. Brock Faber said, "Everyone has their own views on things. I'm honored to wear the red, white, and blue. For us, we're just focused on winning games." This tends to be the answers, very just, generic. But there was one response that got a lot of attention. Matthew Tkachuk, who scored 2 goals last night, did very well, as did his brother Brady Tkachuk, said here on some fans booing the U.S., quote, "I didn't like it. That's all I got." Now, my issue isn't even necessarily his response. It's that there hasn't been a proper follow-up from sports journalists to probe as to what are your thoughts on what Trump is doing, on mocking Canada, on calling it the 51st state, on calling Prime Minister Trudeau a governor. How would you feel if Canada, with let's in this fake scenario, pretend it's a military superpower, is mocking the US, is calling the president a premier, which is essentially the equivalent of a governor, threatening annexation, imposing tariffs. How do you think that would make you feel? Shockingly, somebody actually answered that question. I'll get to that later on because this came out right before I went to record, and thank God I saw it because I'm happy to include it here later. But that is the question that is not being addressed here. So this is the moment where he was asked, as Greg breaks down here, when you're both asked about fans booing the national anthem, when you poke your brother Matt, so he'll answer the question instead, and your brother realizes he's got a tap dance on a political landmine. So I believe Brady was asked the question. He didn't want to answer it. He tapped his brother here, and you can see Matthew Kachuk a little uncomfortable. Now, I can't show the video, I'm assuming, because when it comes to sports, the copyright is nuts. So I'm not going to even risk showing the video. But that's essentially the quote is what I showed you. He said he didn't like it. Now, as I put this on Blue Sky, don't ask a woman her age, a man his salary, a hockey player about politics. I love hockey. I got to say, I love it. I'm wearing a Leaf sweater right now. I don't want to know the politics of most hockey players because I'm sure it's terrible. I've seen hints, bits and pieces, examples here when, the response to these boos. I don't need to know. But if I'm going to be told, I can't help but feel a certain way about it. Steve Simmons, who is not one of my favorite people, a reporter for the Toronto Sun, incredibly conservative, came with this quote tweet, which is fantastic, saying, "Did you ask him what he thought of the U.S. president referring to the Canadian Prime Minister as Governor Trudeau yesterday? This isn't hockey booing. This is our country under attack. There should be more booing right now, and I'm not a Trudeau supporter in any way." Booing an anthem is the mildest form of protest that you should expect. These hockey players should be happy it's not more. The idea of a hockey player getting angered about this booing when it's very clear what it's about is not booing the players. It's not booing your average American. It's clearly booing based on the situation that Canada is in right now with Donald Trump. And I thought it was worth sharing this. Oh God, here is Matthew Kachuk. This is after the Florida Panthers won the Cup. This was recently though. They visited the White House, and they're all dressed like little Trumps, a bunch of little toadies here, and they're smiling with Trump. Here's a quick clip from that interaction.
Thank you, Mr. President, for having us today. We greatly appreciate it, and being one of the few Americans, who loves this country so much. This is such an incredible day for myself, and you wake up every day and really grateful to be an American. So thank you.
How cute. Now, a lot of people came to the defense of the Florida Panthers and Matthew Kachuk after this, saying, well, this is what sports teams do. After they win, American sports teams, they go visit the White House and they shake the president's hand. Unless you're the Philadelphia Eagles, who in 2018 protested the White House, and there was sort of a mutual understanding here. So Trump called off the visit, but this was after many Eagles players were saying they weren't going to attend the White House ceremony. So the team was unable to come to the White House on Tuesday. Trump said in a statement released late on Monday night, he said they disagree with their president because he insists that they proudly stand for the national anthem, hand on heart, in honor of the great men and women of our military and the people of our country. Trump's announcement came after a number of players had said they planned to shun the White House visit. Three of those players, safety Malcolm Jenkins, defensive end Chris Long, and receiver Torrey Smith, are part of a group that publicly supported Colin Kaepernick, the NFL player who kneeled during the national anthem to protest against racial inequality. It's possible for professional athletes to educate themselves, to fight for causes outside of sports. It's possible. It happens. It's possible to take a stand. When it comes to hockey players, there is a very low bar. The bar is incredibly low, and you almost never see something like this unless it's instituted by the actual league to encourage it. Now, another reaction here. Brad Marchand on fans booing the U.S. anthem at Bell Center last night, quote, "They should not be booing the Americans during that anthem. They have nothing to do with the political things that are going on. I do feel bad for those guys in the moment. I don't think it's right. So Brad Marchand is a Canadian hockey player, plays for the Boston Bruins, and I just think he's wrong here. I understand his position, the position that he's in, where he's not American. He may feel weird about encouraging the booing as a Canadian hockey player, especially considering he plays for an American team and he plays with Americans. And, these are his friends as well. So it's again, it's a weird position to be in. That said, I think it's fine to call out that he's wrong. Essentially, especially when politics has always been a integral part of sports. Some of the most memorable matchups have been memorable because of the politics involved. Case in point, the Miracle on Ice. When the U.S. defeated the Soviet Union, ABC News calling it here the Cold War on a sheet of ice. This was an incredibly politically charged hockey game. So for people to say politics doesn't deserve to be in hockey, or it shouldn't be in hockey, shouldn't be in sports, it always has been and it always will be. To pretend otherwise is to simply ignore reality, ignore history. And in fact, this victory by the U.S. inspired many American hockey players that came after. So again, politics is a part of sports, and you can't separate the two as much as you would like to. Some reactions from fans here to Tkachuk's statements. We don't like the tariff man. Simple to understand. Yeah, we don't like how they're trying to annex us. And 40 million Canadians don't like their country's sovereignty being attacked. Cope. This response here: if you're offended by Canada booing the U.S. anthem, but you're not offended by your own government threatening to invade and make Canada a 51st state, you're a gross hypocrite. Canada has every right to boo us. We're being a piece of shit country to our good neighbors. Matt Drake writing this: I played in a tournament down there once as a kid where the parents of the other team booed our anthem super loudly. We were told because Chrétien had decided not to join the Iraq War. We were 12 and didn't cry about it. So, and who was proven right, by the way? History has proven Chrétien correct, even though many back then, many Americans at the time, citizens, not necessarily politicians, were protesting the Iraq War. And Trump now, by the way, pretends he was anti-Iraq War. So it's just... Anyways, I don't want to get off on a tangent. Sam here, bringing this point up. This is funny. Hockey, this is the toughest sport built on pure hatred, and its greatest rivalries include things like Lemieux smashing Draper's face in and Clark breaking Karlomov's ankle. Also hockey. Please don't boo my national anthem. It hurts my little feelings because it is my identity. Fantastic. Sam also made this point, and I'm going to have the follow-up that I can't believe exists. I just think that if hockey media is going to keep asking players how they feel about booing the anthem, you should ask the follow-up question of how they feel about the American threats to annex Canada. Otherwise, it's a useful and irresponsible question. Exactly. And amazingly, Cam Robinson, credit to Cam Robinson of the content director and director of film scouting at Elite Prospects. Good job, Cam, here. Texting with an American player who asked to remain anonymous. I asked how he felt about the U.S. anthem being booed. Quote, don't love it, makes you kind of cringe to see that. I then asked what he thought of the continued threats of annexation and the president calling the Canadian PM governor. Quote, yeah, when you look at it from that side, I wouldn't like another country threatening to swallow up mine, especially one as big as the U.S. Would probably do more than boo an anthem. Thank you. That's all we are asking. Thank you. Look, there is potential here. There is potential to educate these hockey players on what is going on. If journalists just did their job, framed questions in the way that you should be framing them, maybe they can learn something. Maybe their politics can improve, potentially. But if you treat this booing as some sort of amorphous thing that is just existing out in the world and who knows why, what do you expect? You have to actually frame these issues the way that they should be framed. Context is everything. Journalists, I don't care if you're a sports journalist, journalists should know that. You have to include that context. Otherwise, the reporting on it is useless.